Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. This is our very first in-person interview that we're doing, and as always, you guys already know that we have an amazing guest for you guys. Now, before I introduce my guest, I want to say that this is real huge, and thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and everything. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to get to them as we go. We are running a little bit behind. We did have some technical difficulties. Blame me. You guys already know, right? But here we are. Here we are, right? And we're going to go ahead and say before we get started that this is for educational purposes only. Okay. And hey, we're going to jump right into it. Today's guest, she decided to come in and do an in-person with me. I'm really excited about her. Her name is Laura Padgett, and she has an amazing organization. She's out here doing some amazing stuff. But most importantly, she has an amazing story about how she got there as well. So now, without further ado, this is my guest. Laura, would you please introduce yourself? Tell people where you're from and tell people about the work that you do.
Alrighty, thank you, Tony. Hi, my name is Laura Padgett. I am originally from the Soviet Union. I was born in Moscow, Russia. What I do through my company called Padgett Care is I offer somatic transformation from PTSD through a completely integrative approach to trauma and grief.
Yeah. And you're also a doula, right?
Yes, I am a death doula for combat veterans in hospice.
Oh, man, see, that is amazing. We need more people out there that are doing this work. And, I am truly excited to get into this. Now, tell people how the Soviet Union?
Yes, Soviet Union.
Okay, elaborate on that a little bit.
So I come from a long line of military family, and during the fall of the Soviet Union, my siblings and I were one of 350,000 children who basically were either displaced or orphaned.
Wow.
So I ended up in the orphanages. My siblings ended up displaced elsewhere.
Now, have you found your siblings?
Yes, I found my siblings in 2020 through an organization from Alex Spielberg called I'mAdopted.org. It is an international adoption agency founded in New Zealand that helps other post-Soviet orphans reunite with their families.
Oh, wow. Now, see, that is truly amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That is the first time I've ever heard of that. But you also, how did you get into? What was your journey like? Right, ever since when this happened, being displaced, not being around your family, and everything else, and having all your siblings spread out all the place. What was your journey like?
So my journey was very much, I would compare it to the Firebird, the Phoenix, because it started off with basically ashes, a lot of destruction. My family, the Soviet Union was collapsed. It basically was no longer what it used to be and in tatters. And then I got adopted by a U.S. veteran, actually, of the Korean War, and he was a prisoner of war in the 1920 Bolshevik Polish War. So he adopted me with the understanding of the trauma that I had experienced. So he understood that was kind of the stipulation of the adoption, was she has faced a lot of violence in her developmental years. Please be aware that she may not attach to you because of this trauma. And so he dealt with the rage. He learned a lot of therapy because of it. And it was kind of a journey from childhood, learning how to navigate trauma, learning how to navigate rage, learning how to navigate a lot of just mental health things growing up. So I always kind of joked that my childhood was more of an education on mental health and emotional regulation than it was a traditional childhood and education. And that helped me because I faced a lot of various other traumas. I faced a lot of molestation as a child, rape in my teen years, and then my adopted family passed away when I was in my early 20s. And so that kind of led into a whole segment about understanding death, understanding hospice, because I was my mother's hospice caregiver, basically. I dropped out of school to help take care of her. That had a ripple effect on the rest of my family who passed away within months of each other. So it was a lot of death. And I was left at 23 with what I call inherited grief.
Hmm. Okay. I love that term right there, inherited grief, right? Because I think that's such an unfamiliar term.
Yes.
And so elaborate on it a little bit. Explain to the audience what inherited grief is.
So inherited grief is much like ancestral inherited trauma, where you do not only just take on your own grief and loss, but the grief and loss of those before you. So when my family died, within months of each other, I took on my grandmother's grief. I took on my mother's grief on top of my grandfather's grief and my uncle's grief all at once. It was like a snowball.
Yeah.
So it felt more like an inheritance of this grief, of this loss, of this death. And I very much in the beginning struggled with it. I ran because I was afraid. I felt angry at the universe, at God, at whatever higher power there is out there, because I felt robbed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why me? Why did I have to go through all of this loss? And much just like an inheritance, there are responsibilities that come with it. And I learned that the responsibility of inherited grief is the celebration of it. Learning how to honor, family legacy. What did that mean to me? That became in and of itself its own journey of legacy. What exactly does legacy look like to me? What do I want to pass on to my own children?
Mm-hmm.
What behavior patterns, what value systems, what inheritance do I want to give them? And from my own experience with that, I knew I didn't want to give them this inheritance of loss, this burden of like this heavy cloak that's just weighing on you and it's dragging all around that you feel like everyone around you can see. It was more like, I want to give you the inheritance of courage, of perseverance, of resilience,
Mm-hmm.
because of the death, because of the loss. It's just like the Firebird. It's less about the ashes. You use those ashes and nurture those ashes into wildflowers.
Okay. Because that's interesting. Which now I want to backtrack a little bit because you had to go through this at such an early age.
Yes.
And you've touched on the anger, you touched on the rage and the trauma and everything. How does someone at an early age navigate that?
Oh.
Right? Because it's pretty much it's not talked about, right? It's not experienced.
Yeah.
And at such an early age, it's something that's hard to navigate.
Yes.
So go ahead and touch on that. I'm gonna go over here real quick. Go ahead and touch on that for me.
The way I navigated it was very much baptism of fire. I learned about grief at a very young age.
Uh-huh.
In my developmental years, growing up, believing my biological family was dead. So as a young adult, it felt very much overwhelming, like a dark sea of just grief. So my journey started off with the grief, dealing with the business side of death as well. Going through, probate court, learning how to become an executor of an estate, planning and finalizing funerals and all of that. So it made me feel like I grew up too fast, which then put me on this path of addiction. And alcohol was very much my way of numbing that grief so I could deal with the business side of death.
Okay. Go ahead and just keep talking. I'm setting up another stream over here.
Oh yeah, perfect.
Because I find this to be truly, truly amazing. And just learning how to navigate it as well.
I definitely first learned on how not to navigate and how not to do it. And then watching the fallout and watching a lot of opportunities slip by me because of my refusal to deal with my grief, to face it head on, was interesting because I was left with this realization that I can't run from it. I can't run from it in alcoholism. I can't run from it in an addiction to work. I can't run from it in, deflection and distraction. I actually have to face it if I want to do something with it.
Okay, definitely understand that. I'm grabbing on to some people right now.
Oh yeah.
Who may be tuning in. So you can hear me perfectly fine over here.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So what I'm doing right now is just I'm moving some channels around and things like that. So as soon as I can figure out what they're doing over here.
Yeah.
That's all. Oh, there we go. Got this over here. We're gonna go ahead and go to this one right here, and boom, we got that. I'm gonna share this around to some more people, and yeah, like this.
Yeah.
This is truly amazing. So how did other people perceive you?
I had a mixed bag of reactions. So because I was put into a position of business at such a young age because of all the death, I dealt with a lot of actually disbelief. I dealt with a lot of people because of my young age, because I was a young woman who didn't really take me seriously. And then I noticed the other half were very afraid of me.
Oh, wow.
They were either intimidated, afraid. So I felt very isolated, and I watched them kind of slowly distance themselves from me because they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know how to handle, this young woman just lost her entire family. She's dealing with all this other stuff. How do you deal with that?
Right.
It was just kind of like, well, we don't. We just walk away from it. The thoughts and prayers, as I like to call it.
Wow. I mean,
I'm actually very thankful for it, though, because it did teach me that I was able to stand on my own 2 feet with it because I didn't have a choice.
Okay.
And so I took that as an opportunity. And it really made me just sit there with my grief and look at it for what it truly was.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, I guess my thought would be, that's a hell of a thing to try to accept.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess I'm having trouble understanding how does one actually come to a place of acceptance of something like this, right? Because I know for me, the stuff that I've had to come to a place of understanding was difficult. It was extremely difficult. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And as a man, it was just one of those things like I know how hard it was for me. Right? Without support, without anyone helping me navigate that world and things like that, So it was just like listening to you gives me more courage to want to go out and say, let's do this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also trying to articulate what's going on with me.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where my question would lie. Like how does one articulate that? Hey, I'm fucked up. And I know that's probably not what people want to hear, but
yeah, but it's true.
It's true.
It's
right?
very true. It's
Okay.
like excuse my language for the crudeness, but it's like shit has hit the fan.
Right.
Let's not sit here and pretend it smells like a rose garden. Let's acknowledge the fact that it smells like a barn in here so we can actually clean it up.
Right.
And for me, I guess that point of, okay, shit hit the fan, and I had to accept that shit hit the fan was not so much in the articulation of it, but the absence of it.
Okay.
The absolute absence of it, where what was left behind was silence.
Right.
And I realized that I couldn't stand that silence, and that was my acceptance point.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense. That's starting to make a lot of sense right there. But it's still one of those things that, when I think about stuff like that, thinking about those losses, and especially coming from a place of um, having to navigate this world in that aspect of it. Like I look, you talk about violence and everything else. I yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of that you just said. Like how many fights did you get into?
Quite a lot, actually. Quite a lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
My 20s could be considered just an absolute whirlwind of just extremes. That's the best way to put it. It was
Okay.
like highs and lows, where during this time, because of my financial inheritance that I received, there was a lot of overwhelming freedom because of that. So with my addiction, I used my alcoholism as a way to mask. And until I couldn't mask it anymore, where the alcoholism became less of, hey, this is helping me, break out of my shell. This is helping me talk to people. And it became more of something that was dependent. And that it became more about the alcohol then than it did about anything else. And I got into fights. My last fight that I finally said, okay, I need to stop with the fighting at least because I continued drinking, was in 2017. I was with my ex-husband at the time with another two friends. We were at an RV park at Buena Vista. And my ex-husband at the time was drinking moonshine, and he was pretty drunk. And I had already gone to bed. He had brought someone else over to the campsite. They were loud and rowdy, and I was just kind of like, hey, could you keep it down? Well, that escalated into a lot bigger scene where the next thing I remember, my ex-husband was on the ground. This other guy was standing over him with his fist like this. So I jumped on this guy's back. He spins around. We get into a tussle. He grabs me by the neck and is ready to basically punch me in the face. And my rage just kicked in. And I was like, excuse my language again, you're going to fucking hit me, hit me. And it got to that point. And I remember his friends having to pull him off of me. And the look on his face was just, what? And I remember the security guards came and they're like, you guys have to leave now. And that was the last time that I got into a physical fight. And I realized that, okay, I can't be taking my rage out like this. This is not acceptable.
Okay.
And that kind of led me into a different path.
Okay. Now, the reason why I asked about that, because I used to be an alcoholic myself.
Okay.
Right. And I started because I wanted to numb myself from the world.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't really start drinking very heavily until I was in my 20s. And I've been drinking since, I started drinking when I was about 16, 17 years old, right, in DC. I was in Job Corps at the time. As the Job Corps, we used to go off campus, get those weekend pass and everything. And, I never really liked the hangover, right?
Yeah.
I did like the numbness, and I didn't understand that at first, right? Because I was always like, I used to hate the taste of alcohol. And over a period of time, it was just like, all right, I'm numb to the world, meaning that I don't have to think about anything else. And normally I would just go off and just go to sleep somewhere, and things like that. And then I realized, like when I really got into drinking, that I had such a high tolerance for it. Now, I say that to say this, although I had a high tolerance for it, it did change my personality a lot, right? So it would depend on what I drank. which I did. I later on found out the effectiveness of clear alcohol and dark alcohol and
Yeah.
beer, right? So I knew that if I drank beer, I was good.
Yeah.
I was the happiest drunk bitch ever want to be around, right? But I drank a lot.
Yeah.
I drank a lot. Um, but if I drank dark alcohol, I would then give people a choice, depending. And what that choice was, either we're going to fight or I'm going home with her. Now, clear alcohol was pretty much like, no, you don't get to go home. I'm going to punch you in the mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna fight. We had nothing, right? We had nothing. But that's just the way that it was, and things like that, you know. And I've seen people who were really good at hiding it, and I think I was one of them, and
Yeah.
everything. And I got to a point to where I can drink all day long, and
Yeah.
people never knew, you know, I was drunk, right? And I did that for years and years and years, but I never understood that that was the source of my downfall each and every time that I've gotten to a place where my life was going okay,
Yeah.
right? Life and the ups and downs and things like that. And I didn't realize that what I was doing is that I was masking the trauma that I had been going through, right? I was masking the grief that I had experienced. I was masking the nightmares and things like that, right? I just thought it was normal
Yeah.
until you realize they're not,
Yeah.
right? Um, let's talk about grief. When did you understand grief? Like fully understood? Because you know, at an early
Yeah.
age, when you lose someone, we just get taught that we just lost someone,
Yeah.
right? When did you start to put a name to it?
I started putting a name to my grief, I would say, when I was faced with it fully, when I was completely alone in 2013. That was when I found myself alone in my house. It was completely quiet, and that's what I mean by the silence. The silence was almost deafening for me.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so that made me realize this is grief,
Mhm.
where it was the absence of sound. It was the absence of the laughter that I was used to. It was the absence of the little things, like the stove being on or, the radio in the background. It was just silence. And I realized that is what grief was. And that's what I was running from and what I was trying to fill as a void through, hanging out at bars or doing business things or just completely and totally constantly traveling. It was this busyness to fill that silence.
Mhm. Okay.
And so for me, grief, I understood it as the absence of sound.
Okay. I can definitely see that. I can definitely understand that as well. You know, because for me in grief, once I understood it, I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Like I fell in love with the silence. I fell in love with the messiness. I fell in love with everything that came along with it. It became more like this attachment,
Yes.
right? And this sounds strange to a lot of people, but it's the first time I've never felt abandoned.
Yes.
It never left me. Then I understood that no matter what, it it always was honest with me.
Yes.
I didn't have to worry about it lying to me, saying that these things were, what it was, and it turned out to be something different. It said my grief pretty much came to me and said, look, you can have this if you want it. And it became a mentor to me.
Yes.
And I became a student, but it also guided me along the pathway of um, understanding and experiencing true healing in the process.
Yes.
So and that's what I was asking, and that's why I said I can relate to that solace, the loneliness and things like that. Because although I was lonely in the form of people leaving me, I wasn't lonely in the sense of the knowledge and the wisdom that I obtained,
Yes.
right? So I'm gonna hand that over to you. Elaborate on some of the adventures that you had to go through throughout that process, because it is a process.
It is. And I really much like the comment you made that it became like a friend, a mentor, because for me, that silence, that grief, very much felt like an angel standing guard.
Okay.
It was like that invisible force, that invisible constant person just right there that I knew was always present. Where I began then to less parties, less networking parties, less cocktail parties, less hanging out at the ski lodge, less traveling and talking to strangers at the bar until closing time. And it became more about, I began seeking out that solace by myself so I could listen to it. So I could listen to, the little things that I wasn't paying attention to before. But it took a lot to get there. And I think the biggest thing was spending time anywhere and everywhere in a public place. Where that was part of my journey was I became a barfly where just like with you with the alcohol, I could drink from, 8 a.m. until I went to bed and no one thought I was drunk. People knew, oh, she's drinking. She had her Coors Light. She had her little red wine, but they didn't think I was, falling over, stumbling drunk. So it was just, oh, Laura's fun. Laura's social. Laura's just a butterfly. And that was part of my journey because as much fun on the surface as it was for me and how much fun I had, quote unquote, look at me, everything's fine. I realized why I was doing it was from this bar to that bar to that bar to that bar. I would make a whole weekend of it. And it was, and I was still lonely. I could be in a room full of people and we could be having, the time of our lives. And I was still the loneliest person in that room. And I realized that in and of itself, that need for constant noise was an addiction, more so than the actual alcohol. For me, the alcohol was more of a way to feel something, and the noise was more of the numbing. So when I took that away and I just sat with it, sat in the silence of my house, completely just the ticking of the clock was it. It made me more just because I couldn't escape it. And I kind of forced myself with that, where I forced myself to, okay, I'm not going to go to the bar. I'm going to sit here. And I did kind of go through this hermit stage that I felt very renewed once I came out of it. I felt stronger. I felt more connected to myself.
Okay, I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. And it raises this curiosity. And I want to ask, what was the most challenging moment in your life, whether it be, or multiple times, and whether it be experiencing trauma, experiencing grief, or a combination of all of these different things, because trauma has so many different levels to it, right? But also, how did you navigate the mental health?
I did it. That was the thing. I didn't. On the surface, I seemed like the most collected, composed person who was on top of the world and had it all. On the inside, my mental health was shut off completely, where I almost felt robotic. And that made me feel almost alien because it was like I was mimicking emotions rather than genuinely feeling them. I felt like an actor in my own skin in many ways. And that was tough. That was very tough. And when I got tired of that, tired of feeling like there was a movie camera and I was, going through the lines, going through the movements like a rehearsal, it became very numbing for me. And it felt like I didn't have any mental health, good or bad. It was like a void. Even happy moments then became just apathetic moments. There was like no genuine reaction.
I understand the disassociation of emotions from many, many things.
Yes.
Right. And mimicking right?
Yeah.
I learned how to do that at a very early age, was mimicking other people and watching what they were doing because my trauma was already there.
Yeah.
It had already been a part of me. And in order to seem like a normal young man in the world, I used to just watch people and go, oh, that's what that looks like. Oh, this is what that looks like, right? You know what I'm saying? And I would hear people tell jokes, then I would look around and look at the reaction
Yes.
or the response from
Yeah.
other people. Oh, I'm supposed to laugh about that. Ha, ha. You know, or I would see somebody get upset about something, and I'm going, maybe I should get upset too,
Yeah.
right? You know, it took me a long time to distinguish,
Yeah.
right? Those different things. So I can definitely relate to in that aspect of it, in that realm. So then, you know, going back, let's talk about some of your challenges, though. You know what I'm saying? Navigating that your experiences, and things like that. And then, you know, I want to move it to how did you start working with veterans after, you know, understanding what you wanted to do?
So it was kind of working with veterans was actually very much a safe spot for me. It was almost like a return to home because I grew up in a military and veteran family.
Mhm.
I always felt safe with the veteran community. It was
Okay.
always a way for me as a little girl to go home.
Mhm.
And that was actually very reassuring. So when I was going through my divorce, when shit really hit the fan, and I was just like, you know, I may walk out of here with very little to nothing. That's when I really got into the hospice work with veterans because it felt familiar.
Okay.
It felt like I
Okay.
did when I was a little girl. And it helped me remind me of, you know, the things that I did want, the things that I wanted before death happened. It reminded me of my goals. It reminded me of the values that I grew up with, the values that were important to me.
Okay. Okay. Um, that makes sense.
And
That
it
makes
also
sense.
helped me, especially working with like the World War II veterans in hospice, the Vietnam veterans in hospice. It inspired me to hold myself to a higher standard. And that's when I really started taking care of my mental health because I became dissatisfied with my own lack of engagement in my life.
Mm.
I
Okay.
became complacent in my own life to the point where that's when I realized my mental health was not good, was when I became so complacent, I did not care about my well-being or the situations that I put myself in.
Okay. Makes sense. Um, I guess my next question would be is, you know, when did you decide to become a deaf doer? What was that deciding factor? That there was like no one wakes up and says, "This is I want to be a doer," right? Like
I love
it's
that.
right, you know, like it's just like when I talk to people, right?
Yeah.
I've only known one person, and she is freaking amazing. She woke up and said, "I want to work with grief," right? Although she had never experienced it. She has now, but before then, she had already fell in love with it, and things
Yeah.
like that. And most people have a love-hate relationship with it
Yeah.
as well, you know. And not everybody has have that intuition or that desire, right?
Yeah.
Because we see a lot of people, and I had to tell somebody not too long ago, like not everyone will do what we do in this field,
Yeah.
right? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It takes a certain person or a special individual that will go and say, this is this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because grief is messy.
It is.
It's hurtful. It is traumatic in some cases, right? And it has a multitude of lanes that it can go down.
Yeah.
And so I pose that question to you. You know, like what was that deciding factor? What was that aha moment where you said, you know what? I really dig this right here.
I think there was a lot of little aha moments for me, especially growing up.
Mhm.
Death has been something that has always followed me. It's something that even as a little girl, I've always had a very special connection
Mhm.
to that many people thought was very morbid curiosity. where it was like, oh, because I love this. I love going to cemeteries. I love, respecting the spiritual aspect of death. And I guess during that time in my own grief where I finally faced the silence, and I was in the middle of finalizing my divorce. I was just kind of completely a new beginning, where a lot of things were just things that I refused to let go of were taken away from me in a very way. And it just kind of, that continuing loss of things being taken away from me made me want to explore it further. Because I realized death isn't just the physical passing of consciousness. We experience death every single day.
Mm.
Every single day we experience the death of the dawn, death of little things. Because what death is just the transition.
Mm. Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And that's what made me want to become a death doula, was when I finally realized I'm experiencing little deaths on Petit Moite every single day. Every minute of the day is a little death.
Mm.
And it was like, well, it made me get curious. I became curious almost like a child with it then.
I like that.
And for me, at first, it was a lot of insecurity, a lot of self-consciousness of, oh, I'm that weird girl who's getting, almost childlike joy out of exploring what death is. And it also gave me that power, though, that power of confidence of, yes, why are we scared of death? And that made me really want to explore it fully, of making it a life purpose.
Mm. Have you ever really asked people why they're afraid of death?
Yes.
Right. And we're going to touch on that. I want to touch on that as well, because I love the fact of that you said death. We experience death every day. That takes me back to a scientist, right? And he was actually doing experiments with people during sleep. And if anybody knows who it is, put it in the comments for me, and everything else. But this guy would monitor people's sleep behaviors, and what he would notice is that there would be 10, 15 minutes throughout a person's sleep where they would actually stop breathing. But they would stop breathing, but their heart and everything, like everything was normal, but they were technically dead. And I started really diving into that, right? And I tell people this right here, like I make it a point to have one-on-one time with my soul, to allow my soul to go out into the universe, to explore, to have an experience, and then bring these things back, this knowledge, to me. So when I go out into a physical sense, and I run across individuals like that, I want to be able to go, wow, I know you.
Yeah.
Right? It's the feeling of deja vu, like you've known someone before, right? But this scientist did these experiments, and he said, you die every night that you go to sleep. You just never know.
Yeah.
But when you become really deprived of oxygen and things like that from not breathing, your body will kick on in a natural response, and then you will inhale, and your consciousness has returned.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating.
It is. It is.
I thought that was fascinating. So it just reminded me of what you had just said right there. And I was just like, wow, okay. Now, again, these are just things that I found out and started doing, reading up on and things like that. And it's just like, like, is there some truth to that?
Yes, I very much believe so. And I think the more and more we as a society and as a collective start to really explore spirituality and the science behind spirituality, which is, quantum physics and all of that, we realize the question of what does it mean to be alive? What is quote unquote consciousness? I think we're beginning to understand, because not to kind of backtrack, death is what we consider the end of consciousness versus the transition of consciousness. And when we ask ourselves on a very basic level, what is consciousness? I believe it is the space between particles. It is that nothingness, that state of absolute being. And I think that's why people are afraid of death, because the state of absolute being is our understanding of eternal. It means there is no beginning and no end. It is unconditional.
Mm.
It's an unconditional state of being. And I guess that means, like, when I say a state of being, I'm talking about vibrations, the vibration of love, of compassion, of courage, of strength. And when we die, that is our absolute state of being. Whatever state of consciousness we are at the moment of death, which is the whole point of a death doula, is to help them get to that desired state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do transition, that is their experience completely.
I like that. I love the fact that you even avoid consciousness up into it, because it's something that we all should have conversations around, and even explore. I think having conversations around death, dying, and grief should be something that's normal.
Yeah.
And it's not. And so when I find that when I do talk to other individuals or consulting with them as well, it's such a foreign concept, right? It's such a negative stigma that comes along with it. And I go, no, this is a natural part of life. And then it dawned on me, the reason why people have attached such a negative thing behind those concepts or those phrases, those words.
Yeah.
Because it's normally associated with addiction. It's normally associated with homelessness. It's normally associated with suicides and all of those different things. So I get that as well. But I tell people, unless you really understand it, you should be having conversations to be comfortable with understanding why these things are associated with it, because it is part of it.
Yeah.
It is definitely part of it. So it's nothing to be ashamed of at all.
And I think as a society, I see it especially in social media and all of that, we are conditioned to fear death. We are conditioned to consider it taboo, where even look at like Facebook, you can't say the word killed, dead, or suicide. It's now unalive by self. We are creating this cultural and social stigma around death and dying that is very natural. It happens to everyone. Where yes, people are purposely being conditioned to be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. It's becoming just like politics, religion, finances. You don't talk about that. So people who experience grief and dying, they get ostracized like a leper, almost.
Mm-hmm.
This person's experiencing that taboo. We can't do that. And I do love the idea of let's normalize it. Let's talk about it. Let's have it be a normal conversation that we have not only amongst ourselves, but with our kids every single day. Just like we ask them, how's your day? It should be something that's natural.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing with death that I've noticed is there's so much taboo around death, but yet it is so similar. It's parallel to the birthing process.
Mm.
And it's interesting to see that bias. We have such admiration, such joy, congratulations, such a celebration around the transition of, before consciousness to this level of consciousness. So why don't we have that exact same understanding with death? We look at the parallels between, labor, giving birth to a child, and the labor of death. It's very similar.
Okay.
Except in reverse.
Right. I want to add to that because I totally agree. It's just something that I was, as you were saying, I started thinking about it, right? Consciousness, right? I think, and again, this is just my thoughts on it, and everybody may have a different perception of it. And if you do, please, don't take what I say personal or anything like that. But in a lot of ways, I believe that consciousness is the manifestation of thought, in-depth thought into the world, right? And when we expire, when the physical body expires out of this world, our consciousness is then released into another realm, where it can begin to make a choice, right? And you will have in that moment of transition, you will have two choices. People get mad when I tell them this. I go, look, I feel that we're all recycled into this world. I'm doing everything I can to not come back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done. I've had my
graduate.
Yeah, I'm ready to graduate, right? And so, I've explored this in an in-depth, to have a more in-depth understanding. And it keeps coming back to me. Don't choose the light. Choose this way. If you choose the light, you will be recycled back. But as long as you're done with your work here, you don't have no reason to come back. Choose the other.
Yeah.
And go through that and allow yourself to expand, not just through the finite or the limitations of your subconscious mind, but to open the doors to a more vast awakening of the unconscious mind, to really tap into that and go into that other realm
Yeah.
of expansion. But again, these are my thoughts on that particular subject and things like that. But of course, I'm weird.
Actually, I really like that, because one thing that I would like to add as well is I do agree. I believe our consciousness continues to get recycled over and over and over in what I consider this dimension of consciousness. I believe there's about 7 different dimensions of consciousness, and this one's the third, engaging all of our quote unquote physical senses. And I believe that we continue to be reincarnated over and over and over again with similar life patterns.
Right.
Yeah.
Until you kind of get it down pat.
Until you learn the lesson and pass the test.
Right.
And the easiest way I can put it is, until everything that is buried in the unconsciousness gets raised into consciousness, we will continue to experience the same events, the same patterns, the same traumas over and over and over again. And we will eventually, actually on a genetic and DNA level, pass that trauma on to the next generation and next generation, until finally someone goes, okay, enough. Let's raise this into awareness. Let's raise the unconscious into the consciousness. Because when we raise it to the conscious level, that emotional reactivity, that animalistic part of our brain can then be like, okay, I don't have to emotionally react. I can now respond with wisdom, with courage, and compassion.
I love that right there. I do enjoy understanding that aspect of it, because again, exploring those different avenues, I think that's what makes us effective in being able to serve other people, right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree. I believe that we're recycled many times over, but yet whenever we come back, we do have more knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? And I think, and I could be wrong. Again, these are just my opinions, my thoughts on this. There are some people that come into this world at a very early age and go, "This is what I'm going to do." I mean, I've seen childhood children come out and just go, "This is what I'm going to do in my life." Right? They already know.
Yeah.
Right? And I think at an early age, they are so fearless that they don't mind going out into the world and getting past the failures right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then they grow up and they become, these amazing human beings in the world and things like that. But then you have individuals like myself, I'm a late bloomer, right? It took me till I was in my 40s.
Okay.
To really understand what was going on. But there was a price to pay for the knowledge that I have. Now, I don't want anybody to ever have to pay that price or anything like that. I really don't. It's a certain level of pain that I had to experience.
Yeah.
In order to learn how to navigate, but not just navigate. I had to learn how to navigate, sit, and then transition myself within a world to where it made sense. And I would tell you that it was the most painful thing that I had ever done. Um, and it was the most worthwhile experience that I've ever had.
Mm.
But that also came with a price as well.
Yeah.
That also came with a price. And I'm continually paying that price, which is fine. I understand. I got a better grasp on it as well, and to help not only navigate this world, but to be able to help others navigate their interpretation of what this world needs to be.
Yeah.
Right now, when when you really begin to get active into this world and begin to put feet on the ground and say, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. What was that? What was that drive like for you? Did you just wake up and or did you fight with the idea?
I fought with the idea. I fought too. I like kicking and screaming, like cream person had me be dragged by the hair because I did not want to, and I tried every other avenue. And it was finally like you could only hit a brick wall so many times before it's finally like, okay, universe, okay, higher self, I get it. You don't have to keep boinking me on the head. But yeah, I definitely went kicking and screaming because I tried everything else. I tried so hard to do the cookie cutter way of, okay, I was going to be a stockbroker. I was going to be, a business owner, a bed and breakfast owner. I was going to do A, B, C, and D. And every time I tried, despite the skill and, talent behind it, I could never get it up and running. Or something would happen where it was the universe going like some freak thing of just, nope, not for you. Nope, try again. Nope, try again.
I thought I was the only one. Listening to you, I'm like, whew, at least I know I wasn't alone in this world, okay? Because I've been so close so many times, right? It's like yourself, starting. I started a company, Savage Nation. Then I turned it into Perfection Fitness. I was a personal trainer, right?
Okay.
Now, regardless, I was doing really well.
Yeah.
I was doing really well. But man, I would tell you every time that I would go, okay, I'm gonna release this so I can focus more on this over here to try to get it where it needs to be. Then something over here would happen. Yeah. I would go, well, I can't release this over here now, because wow, I can't. I still got bills to pay, or something else would happen, all of these multitude of things, and then you can really. This is the part that I used to laugh about. Once I realized it, there would be times where I knew there was time for me to move on.
Yes.
Right? And the way that it would happen, I'm going to share this with you. Tell me if you experienced something similar to this, right? Because there was one time when I lived down in Denver. I had been thinking about walking away from the gangs and everything else. And me and this young lady, we've been staying together. And and I was trying to do things the legit way, right? Yeah. Go out and get a job, and all of these different things, and I'm trying, I'm still trying to, sell drugs and stuff like that. And I would tell you, how do you feel at selling drugs?
Yeah.
I would tell you, it's a hard thing to do, but it's easy when you ain't got nobody to sell them to. So here I am, trying to transition and go and get this job, but I'm trying to sell drugs so I can keep the bills, et cetera, and things like that, because I'm used to having the money. And one day I went out and I realized there was nobody out there. And I was out there flying, right?
Yeah.
Maybe one or two people, not like it used to be. The next following day, same thing. Nobody out there forever. Hustle. Thinking of hustle. But I'm still coming back with no money. And I did that for probably about 2 weeks. And then I'm gonna tell you how it picked me apart. After that, right? I would go out and I would have one day where I'll sell a couple $100 worth of stuff. That'd be it. Go home. I'll go out there every day after that, but it was like every other day I was selling, a little bit of stuff.
Yeah.
Then I got down to where I wasn't selling anything, right? I'm done. I don't have nothing else left.
Yeah.
Now I can't go even buy anything because the money that I was making had to go to bills. So it pretty much picked me apart.
Yep.
It picked me apart, right? And so it got to a point to where I was just like, not quite sure how this worked out, but okay, I guess this is my sign that I'm not selling drugs anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And then now the young lady that I'm with, we're having problems, right? Because I'm transitioning myself into, trying to be a better man, trying to go out and get into a job and all of these different things. And she's used to me having all types of money. She's used to the lifestyle that we have, and where we don't have to worry or about anything. But then we fell behind on rent. I tell you, when you can sit back and just go like this, like, no matter what I do, this is not going to stop.
Yeah.
I used to try everything. And she ended up leaving throughout the course of it. She was like, I guess it's just too much. She ended up leaving, and I had to deal with those things, which is fine, It just taught me a lesson that I can't depend on anyone. All I have is me.
Yeah.
And that's fine, Like if I have to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Right? But you ever watch these things happen?
Oh, yeah. Little dumpster fires here.
Right, and like, you're just watching it go like this.
I'm fine. This is fine.
Yeah. And you just sit back and go, no one will ever believe this is my children.
Very much so. It was actually kind of similar for me too, where it was very much a drastic lifestyle change and fighting that lifestyle change. Where in my 20s, I was trying to become, an investor for, real estate investor, venture capitalist, stockbroker, all of that. And at first it was going great. The money was coming in, lifestyle was great. But it was like the more I kept pushing my real life purpose away, and the more I tried to pursue this life that seemed very, prosperous on the outside, the more that it kept just burning up on me. Little dumpster fires, as I called them, where I got to a point where, because I refused to, okay, I have the knowledge, I have the skills, now you got to go actually do your life purpose. I kept down that path because I got a little greedy with it.
Oh.
I got greedy with the comfort of it. The comfort of knowing what to expect, that comfort zone of, oh, I'm good, all of that stuff. And that's when, things started happening that were completely out of my control. The brewery that I was an investor and co-owner for, all of a sudden, it went belly up in the most spectacular way. Like, it was like a sitcom, honestly. Looking back, it was just there's no other way to put it. And then I kept noticing, like, alrighty. And then my rentals, I started having a lot of issues after all these years of having no issues with my tenants. All of a sudden, I was having just, again, sitcom kind of fiascos of, again, little dumpster fire 1, dumpster fire 2, dumpster fire 3. I was going through a divorce with my ex-husband at the time as well. And, that is a financially very strenuous situation. So that was another little dumpster fire. And I just kind of sat there amongst all my little dumpster fires, hit the fucking button. I'm like, alrighty, I surrender. I get it. You don't have to create any more dumpster fires.
Oh my God. I love the fact that you was like, I went kicking and screaming.
Yes. Hair still smothering.
Right? Like, hold on, where's the steam coming from? Yeah, you knew where it came from, right? Because I call it arguing with, I tell people I argue with myself, right? Because when I got into the grief work, things like that, I was already coming out of the most darkest point in my life, right? I'm already homeless. I've already tried to attempt to take my life and things like that. And here I am coming back from that. Struggling to no end, right? Still didn't know what I was, I knew what I was going to do. I just didn't want to face the fact that this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Right? fight, huh? What are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
You out of your mind. I ain't about to do no grief work. Get somebody else.
Yeah.
That's what I tell you. Get somebody else. There's other people out there that's willing to do it. I am not. I will fight you, right? And I tell you, the more and more I fought it, the more and more it set in on me.
Yeah.
Then it got to a point to where I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, hurry up and come here. No, get away. Hurry up and come here. Go ahead. It's just like when you find someone that that you really connected with, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, come here. No, get away.
Yep.
Come here. No, get away. So, when I tell people, first and foremost, now I look at all of that, and this makes a lot of people upset when I say this, because I know there's people out there that's just like, hey, you get, because I get it, but I have a phrase that I use. Grief is my first love. It's my soulmate.
Yeah.
If grief could be my significant other, it would be my soulmate.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because it's everything that I ever needed or wanted in a person, just in experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, I know it's not going to leave me.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not going to say, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. If you can't, whatever, if you can't do this over here, then I'm going to leave you. It's patience.
Yes, it's unconditional as
It's
well.
unconditional, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it is not only earned my trust, but it's earned my deep embedded love and respect.
Yes.
Right.
Very much so.
Now let's talk about the work that you do and things like that. How long have you been doing what you do?
So my official death doula work started in, I'd say, 2020. And it was one of those things that just kind of, I continued pushing against it. And the universe was like, "Boop, we're just going to pop this in your lap right now. Now let's see what you do with it." And I was just a regular caregiver at the time. So my very first, I guess you can consider, death doula client was not, we weren't expecting that. And he was a World War II veteran, and I got to know him very well over that. And then eventually his diagnosis went from, palliative to, okay, this is hospice. There's no more we can do for you. We can't keep you comfortable. Let's start planning the hospice plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, already they're going to want, a hospice nurse or something. And instead, he actually asked me to stay on. He's like, no, I want you as my caregiver throughout this. And I was like, well, I'm not sure what I can do other than, the basic laundry and all of that. I'm not a nurse. He's like, no, I just want you to listen to me. And what we ended up doing was he ended up talking to me about very personal war experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when my agency at the time started assigning me to veterans and military families and clients that they had that had dealt with significant loss. And that's kind of how the death doula part kind of, I guess, bloomed like a rose, where I was just naturally holding space for these people to talk about some very traumatic losses.
Mm-hmm.
Like murders, combat zones, things like that. And I just listened. I started listening to the stories, especially like with the Vietnam veterans. I had a couple of other veterans that I worked with where they just wanted someone to listen to the stories that they couldn't tell their family.
Mm-hmm.
That, they didn't want someone to psychoanalyze the story. The things that they wanted to let go of, have a release of without, anything in return, just holding space. Because I knew I couldn't fix it. There was no words I could say that was going to magically make it better. I wasn't trying to convert them to any religion. I wasn't trying to sit there and psychoanalyze them and tell them, how does this make you feel? On this chart, this circle, the smiley face, on how this makes you feel. It was just, I would hold their hand. I would just listen without anything in return. And I realized how meaningful that was.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was kind of like, because the family was very grateful and all of that. And I kind of felt, I'll be honest, I felt kind of like a con man. I'm like, I really didn't do anything. I just sat there and listened to his stories. That's it. They're like, you brought him so much peace because you were able to listen to his stories. And that's when I started realizing there was a need just to have another living human being listen to something very deep, very dark, without anything in return. That in and of itself was a service.
So you found your place of servitude to others that have gone through something similar
Yes.
to you.
Yeah.
And I'm right there with you. It's really hard for me to take credit for what I see other people doing.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing. People have told me or tried to correct me and said, sometimes, Tony, you just got to say thank you. Because I don't feel like I do anything.
Yeah.
Right? I don't feel as if I do anything special. I'm just here to hold space with you to help navigate this world or your world and how it has changed.
Yeah.
Through connection and support and through communication, it's all that I feel that I provide for those individuals. Now, here's where it humbled me when someone told me this, and I think it was the same. They were like, "No, you don't understand. You being in that present moment with these individuals meant more to them than anything else."
Yeah.
And I just said, "Well, I'm just doing what I would wanted someone else to do for me."
Yeah.
That's it. I'm not trying to take credit or do anything to take away from their experience.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where I had been with it for quite some time. So now my next question would be, what's next for you?
For what's next for me is right now I just finished my website. It's basaricare.org. And what I'm working on now for January 2025 is to create somatic courses using a Stoic approach to emotional regulation, using the same principles of Marcus. I can't say his last name. Marcus Aurelius. I think that's it.
Gladiator?
Yeah.
That's it.
And so just using that same, understanding that we are experiencing emotions rather than identifying as our emotions and understanding the impermanence of everything. So I'm hoping to come out with that in January in 2025. Just a bunch of little things that I'm kind of working on with that. With the online courses, I'm also building memberships where people can then have support groups for each other, reach out, and I am working on certification courses for people to become professional battle buddies as well.
Oh, wow.
So that they can use our platform to then, once certified, go help others in the same regard.
Mm-hmm.
So have a community where if someone needs, that one-on-one support to listen to a story or just, hey, I need a support system right now, they would have that. Through other people who have similar experiences.
I love that. I definitely love that. Before we wrap it up, how can people find you?
People find me on Facebook. I am under Laura Pasaric. And then also there's more information on my Facebook page about the website. And from there, we are going to have other social media outreaches as well.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress. We're building little by little.
And that's the way that it goes too, right? Because you have to build it little by little. It is definitely a process to be endured and not rushed.
Yes.
And, I look forward to the more work. You guys are going to see more of her and, more collaborations. If you guys are enjoying the in-person podcast, we got a lot more of that coming up as well. Laura's information is in the description on the YouTube channel. So go there, check her out. She just put a website up there. Again, repeat it for me again.
Pisarek.org. That's PISAREKCARE.org.
All right. So you guys go check her out. If you guys know any veterans out there that are struggling right now, please, keep this into your mind and know where to refer them. There's a lot of people out here that are doing some amazing work. Laura's another one of them. You guys, like I said before, you guys are going to see a lot more of her. So, be prepared for that. We got a lot of great things coming up as well. You guys already know who I am. Don't forget, we do have the holiday edition of the magazine coming out. Laura just put in her article for that. We're going to have that included in there. We got some more events. We got more podcasts coming up. We are preparing for the Global Grief Conference 2025, April 25th through the 27th, 3-day event, live stream. We got a lot of great things coming into that as well. Got my second book that's going to be getting done. Then after that, my third book is going to be coming out as well. So you guys keep on top of there. You guys already know. If this is your first time tuning in, and if you haven't already, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, so you will be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And if you enjoy these conversations that we have, please feel free to drop us a comment and share it with someone who can benefit from the conversations that we have. Our goal is to help normalize the conversations around death, dying, and grief, bring you resources, and make sure that you have the support that you not only need, but that you deserve. Okay? And with that being said, I want to say thank you to my beautiful, wonderful guest today.
I want to say thank you for inviting me and having me. This has been wonderful.
I'm going to say thank you. And, people told me I need to say thank you a lot more. So I'm going to say thank you. This has been a great experience. We got to see a lot more of the in-person podcasts, as well as the virtual ones as well. So you guys keep your eyes out on that. With that being said, this is going to conclude this episode of the Brief Let's Talk About It podcast. Guys, I love you, and we're going to see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again.
Take care.